The night sky was the color of smoke. Nothing else existed. No horizon, no stars, no difference between air and darkness. Only the vibration of the engines told them they were moving. Inside the Lancaster, the world was red. Dim lights glowed along the walls, gauges flickered, shadows shifted with every tremor of the fuselage. Captain Michael Reed sat in the pilot's seat, one gloved hand on the control column, the other resting on the throttle. His breath fogged the glass of his oxygen mask. He hadn't spoken in 10 minutes. Words were useless here. The engine said everything that needed to be said. 4 Merlin engines sang in perfect rhythm, a metallic heartbeat that filled every space between fear and thought. Beside him, Navigator Harper leaned over his charts, tracing lines with a shaking pencil. The light from his lamp trembled, a small sun in a red world. "Course steady at 085, he said, voice thin through the intercom. "We'll reach the first waypoint in 5 minutes." Reed nodded. "Copy that." His voice was calm, almost detached, like someone describing weather on a day that didn't belong to him. Behind them, in the wireless cabin, Sergeant Sloan sat hunched over his radio set, headphones pressed tight, listening to the sea of static. Somewhere inside that hiss were voices, call signs, fragments of Morse, sometimes nothing at all. He'd been doing this for years, and he still couldn't tell if the quiet ones made him safer or lonelier. "HQ confirms wind drift minimal," he reported. "Other squadrons are en route. Visibility poor." He hesitated before adding, "They say Berlin's covered in cloud tonight." "That's something," Harper murmured. Cloud cover meant less flak. Maybe. The engineer, Dawson, moved past them, checking gauges, touching metal with practiced certainty. The air was heavy with oil, sweat, and the faint tang of burned insulation. In the tail, Gunner Mills adjusted his turret, the sky around him pure black through the glass dome. He could see nothing. Sometimes he imagined shapes, thin streaks of light, movements that weren't there. He'd stopped blinking to make sure he didn't miss the real ones. Below them, the sea was invisible, but Reed could feel its weight, the sense of something vast and patient beneath them. He thought of how small they were, this single aircraft carrying 7 souls, crawling through the night toward the center of the world's fire. "Mike?" Harper's voice cracked softly in his ear. "You ever think about what it looks like down there? All the cities in the dark?" Reed smiled faintly behind his mask. "I try not to. My mom says it's all lights, like Christmas." "Not tonight." Reed's eyes flicked to the altimeter. 18,000 feet. He tapped the glass, habit more than need. The aircraft hummed around them, steady, loyal. He thought of her as alive, as if the plane were breathing with them. Sloan broke in, again. "Command just sent recall codes to Group C, engine trouble. That's the 4th crew grounded this week." "We'll make it," Harper said quickly, too quickly. No one answered. The intercom fell silent again, filled only with the pulse of engines and the deep, low groan of air slipping over wings. The first sign of Berlin came hours later, an orange glow far ahead, hidden under cloud like a fire behind a curtain. Reed saw it before anyone else. He didn't tell them right away. He watched it grow, a smear of light that shouldn't exist in the middle of the sky. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "There she is." Harper lifted his head, eyes wide. "That's miles off." Not for long. They began descent. The engines changed tone, a deeper growl. The crew adjusted their straps. The bomber was no longer flying. It was falling in slow motion. The glow grew brighter, pulsing against the underside of the clouds. The air began to shake. Sloane's headphones crackled. Voices bled through, half words, broken warnings. Heavy flak, turning, then static again. Reed's hand tightened on the control column. Eyes open. Stay sharp. Below the clouds, flashes bloomed like lightning, but there was no thunder, only distant booms muffled by air. Mills called from the tail. I see them. Lights all over. Search patterns, northeast. Reed adjusted course. Stay under the cover. We go in dark. The cockpit light flicked off. For a few seconds, there was nothing but red afterglow. Then, darkness. Real darkness. The first searchlight cut through the cloud like a blade. It passed in front of them, sweeping the sky, and for one heartbeat the beam caught the edge of their wing, turning ice into glass. Reed's stomach twisted. Don't climb, he said. Not yet. Another beam crossed the first, then another. The sky began to move, alive with light, crisscrossing patterns of white fire. It was beautiful, almost holy. Jesus, Harper whispered. It's like the sky's breathing. Reed didn't reply. He was staring ahead, past the lights, past the fire. The world below had turned into a living thing, glowing and burning and reaching for them. Somewhere inside the noise, he thought he heard a voice, a single word through the static of his headset. Mike. It was faint, impossible, and familiar. He froze. Harper glanced at him. You say something? Reed shook his head slowly. No. But his heart was beating faster now, louder than the engines. Outside, the night opened up beneath them. The sky breathed, and it breathed fire. The night deepened until it felt endless. The clouds below were a single black sheet, the stars above smothered by haze. Inside the Lancaster, time had stopped existing. There was only the hum of the engines, the rattle of loose metal, and the ghostly rhythm of oxygen through masks. Captain Michael Reed glanced at the altimeter. 17,000 feet and steady. The aircraft was holding its breath, the way living things do before pain. Course? He asked quietly. Harper looked down at his chart, pencil trembling slightly in his glove. Still on heading, sir. Wind drift minimal. Good. Reed's voice was soft, almost lost under the engines. He wanted to sound calm because calm was all that kept men from hearing fear in each other's voices. In the wireless cabin, Sloane turned a dial a fraction of an inch. The radio hissed, then whispered, then hissed again. He could hear the faint pulse of Morse from another squadron, distorted, distant, like a heartbeat through water. He jotted a note in his logbook. Signal strength weak, interference rising. The static grew louder. He adjusted the gain. For a second he thought he heard a voice behind the noise, a whisper pressed against his earphones. He froze. The voice was low, broken, almost human. Mike. The word drifted through the interference, clear for half a breath, then gone. Sloane sat perfectly still, the hair rising on his neck. Say again? He whispered into his mic. Nothing, just the wind through the aerials. K for King to command. Repeat last transmission, he said, louder now. Silence. Reed heard the change in Sloane's tone. Problem? Interference, sir. Probably atmospherics. But his hands were shaking slightly. He turned the dial back, searching for the sound. Nothing but a deep, rolling hiss, like wind through endless corridors. Copy that, Reed said. He didn't look back. He didn't want to. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time bent in the dark. Harper broke the silence again. We're approaching the markers, sir. Reed nodded, scanning the instruments. Prepare for the turn. Turning point in 30 seconds, Harper said. His voice cracked a little. You all right? Reed asked. Fine, sir. But he wasn't. His hands kept brushing the St. Christopher medal on his collar, something his mother had sent him. He'd never believed in protection, but tonight the sky felt too big, too alive to ignore old habits. Turning now, Reed said, banking gently. The horizon, what little of it existed, tilted and slid away. The engines groaned as the plane changed direction. In the tail, Mills adjusted his turret to follow the motion, the gun barrels glinting faintly in the dim light. He stared into the black void and muttered, "Feels wrong tonight." His voice didn't reach anyone. The intercom crackled again, just static, then a single click, like someone trying to speak but holding their breath. Sloane leaned closer to the radio, brow furrowed. There it was again, faint, broken, but there. "Mike, you there?" He froze, blood draining from his face. He turned to call out to Reed, then stopped. The captain was already watching him. Reed's eyes behind the mask were unreadable. "What did you hear?" "Nothing, sir," Sloane said too fast. "Probably cross-frequency. Ghost signal." "Ghosts don't use names," Reed said quietly. Sloane swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Reed turned back to the sky, the controls steady under his hand, but something inside him had shifted. Harper broke the tension with numbers. "ETA to target, 22 minutes. The word target fell like lead in the cabin. They all knew what it meant, but no one said it aloud. Down there, under the clouds, was a city. Streets, windows, lives. Reed closed his eyes for a second. The hum of the engines blurred into a low, endless drone, like the ocean he'd crossed 100 times. "Flak's picking up south of us," Mills called from the tail. "Looks heavy." "Stay on course," Reed answered. "We'll skirt the worst of it." Suddenly the plane jolted, a flash of light searing through the cockpit window. Harper flinched. "Jesus, what was that?" "Flak burst! Too close!" Dawson shouted from below. Reed steadied the controls. The sky outside flickered white again, farther this time, but closer than he liked. The intercom hissed. Sloane's headphones crackled once more. "Turn back." The words were soft, urgent, layered under the static like something half alive. "Sir," he shouted, "it's the same voice." Reed's hand tightened on the yoke. "Say again." "Someone's on our channel." Reed's pulse jumped. "Command." "No, sir. It's personal." The voice came again, clearer this time. "Mike, go home." Sloane ripped off the headphones, breathing hard. The sound was still there, faint but real, whispering from the radio speaker. Harper turned, eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" Reed stared at the box, face hidden behind his mask. The engines roared around them, the plane trembling in the dark. He reached over and shut the radio off. The silence that followed was so heavy, it hurt. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Harper whispered, "Who was it?" Reed's voice came low, almost gentle. "Nobody." But his knuckles were white on the throttle. Outside, the flak bursts faded. The glow of Berlin was closer now, pulsing through the clouds like a buried sun. Sloane sat frozen, eyes on the dead radio. In the reflection of the glass, he swore he could still see the signal lamp flickering. 3 slow blinks. Pause. 2 more. Like someone trying to say, "I'm still here." The clouds broke open like torn fabric. Below, the world was red. It wasn't a city anymore, just a moving, breathing wound of fire. Rivers of flame ran through streets, blooming into sparks that drifted upward and vanished into the haze. The Lancaster shuddered in the rising heat. "Target ahead," Harper said softly. His voice was steady now, the kind of calm that only comes when fear becomes routine. Reed nodded, eyes fixed on the glow through the bomb site window. "Open the bay." Metal creaked. Somewhere in the fuselage, chains rattled. The sound was almost ceremonial. Sloane switched the radio back on, against orders. The static was alive again, whispering and growling like distant thunder. He ignored it, focusing on the coded transmissions from the lead squadron. "Group 5 to all. Crosswinds south, moderate flak north of the river. Keep altitude." The words came in bursts, fading between layers of distortion. Then, under it all, the faint echo again. "Mike." Sloane gritted his teeth and turned the gain down, pretending not to hear. Reed looked down through the bomb sight. The haze below pulsed with firelight, flickering in slow waves as if the earth itself were breathing. He saw the faint outlines of streets, bridges, the silver ribbon of a river. He couldn't think about what was underneath. He focused on the pattern, the geometry of destruction. "Hold steady," he said. The plane rolled slightly, caught a crosswind, steadied again. "Left 10. "Left 10, Harper echoed. Dawson's voice came from the intercom, thick with tension. "Flak bursts, 3 o'clock high." The night erupted with white blooms, spreading like flowers of light. The noise reached them a second later, a rolling concussion that shook the fuselage. Mills in the tail swung his turret, eyes scanning the chaos. "They've got us painted, sir." "Stay dark," Reed shouted. "No flares yet." The plane jolted again, metal ringing like a struck bell. "That one's close," Harper shouted. Reed didn't answer. His finger hovered over the release switch. Through the bomb sight he saw it. One clear street, a river bend glowing orange. "Now," he said quietly. He pressed the switch. The plane lifted slightly, lighter by tons. No sound followed, only the faint vibration fading through the frame. Harper whispered, "Bomb's gone." Reed stayed bent over the glass, watching the fall. They disappeared into cloud, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the sky flashed white from below, lighting the cockpit for a heartbeat. Everyone stopped breathing. Sloane crossed himself instinctively. Harper looked away. Reed closed his eyes. He'd seen it 100 times, but it never felt less like sin. "Turning west," he said, his voice hoarse. "Let's go home." They climbed through turbulence, the glow below pulsing through the fog. Mills reported tracers behind them, long white lines stitching the air. "Fighters!" he shouted. "2 of them!" Reed turned the plane hard left. The G-forces pressed them into their seats. The engines screamed. "Hold it together!" Dawson yelled. "We're losing power on number 2. Sparks shot past the window. 1, 2, 3 streaks of light vanishing into the black. Mills fired a short burst, the gunfire deafening inside the metal shell. "They're breaking off!" he yelled. Reed steadied the controls, panting inside his mask. "Damage?" "Oil pressure dropping," Dawson said. "But she's alive." Silence returned, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence after lightning, the kind that hums in your bones. The glow of Berlin faded behind them, replaced by the colorless dark. The clouds closed again, swallowing the light. Harper exhaled slowly. "That's it then," he said. "We did it." Reed didn't respond. His hands were still on the controls, trembling. In his headset, faint under the hum of the engines, came another voice. Not Sloane's, not anyone's. "You can't save them, Mike." He ripped the headphones off. You hear that? He snapped. Harper looked over, confused. Hear what? Reed didn't answer. He adjusted the trim, keeping his eyes forward. Minutes stretched into hours. The radio hissed quietly, an endless whisper. Sloane stared at it like a man watching a sleeping animal he didn't trust. Every so often it crackled, forming half-words that dissolved before they could mean anything. "Captain," Sloane said finally, "permission to cut comms again?" Reed hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." Sloane flicked the switch. The static died. For the first time all night, the only sound was the heartbeat of engines. "Altitude 16,000, Harper said. "Heading west-northwest." "Good," Reed murmured. His eyes burned from staring at the dark too long. The world outside was invisible again, the glow behind them gone. Only the moonlight on Frost told them the sky still existed. Mills's voice came over the line, softer now. "You think they'll remember us, sir, after all this?" Reed thought for a long time before answering. "The sky remembers everything," he said. They flew on, the fire behind them shrinking into memory. But as the cold settled in and exhaustion began to dull the noise of fear, the voice returned, so faint it could have been the wind. "You never came back, Mike." He didn't flinch this time. He just closed his eyes, his hand resting on the trembling yoke, and whispered, "Maybe I never left." Outside, the night went silent again. The fire below was gone. Only the dark remained. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was empty, and the next it was alive. Waves of cloud rising from the horizon like mountains, flickering from within with silent flashes of lightning. The Lancaster dove into it before anyone could react. The first jolt nearly tore the words from their throats. The aircraft bucked, groaned, metal flexing under invisible hands. "Hold it steady," Dawson shouted, his voice shaking. Reed gripped the yoke until his knuckles went white. The altimeter spun madly, numbers blurring in the red light. Wind tore across the fuselage like claws. "Altitude," he called. 15 and dropping," Harper yelled back. "We're in a downdraft." Reed forced the controls forward, the engines howling in protest. "Power up! Keep her level!" Rain turned to ice in seconds, coating the windows in a white skin that crackled under pressure. The world outside vanished again. No horizon, no stars, only flashes of light that made the cockpit look like a heartbeat. "We're losing too," Dawson shouted. "Feather it," Reed barked. The propeller slowed, blades catching the flicker of lightning before freezing still. The vibration eased, but didn't stop. The plane felt heavier now, dragging itself through the air like something wounded. Sloane clung to his radio set, one hand braced against the wall. The static was screaming again, louder than before. It wasn't noise anymore. It was rhythm. Pulses. Almost like breathing. He turned the volume down, but it didn't fade. It was inside the hull now, inside the metal, humming through the rivets. "Mike," it whispered again. He froze, staring at the dials. The voice was different this time, clearer, closer. "You left me there." His throat went dry. He looked toward the cockpit, wanting to speak, but something stopped him. He pressed his fist against his ear, trying to crush the sound. "Stop it," he whispered. But the radio kept breathing. "Course correction," Harper shouted. "We're drifting south." "Forget the course," Reed snapped. "Just keep her flying." The storm rolled around them, a living wall of thunder. Mill's voice came from the tail, faint and distorted. "Visibility 0, sir. I can't even see the fins." "Stay on your instruments," Reed said. "Trust the panel." His own instruments flickered, needles trembling. For a second, everything went black. The lights, the gauges, the hum, and then came back in one blinding flash. In that brief moment of darkness, Reed saw something outside the window. A light, small, distant, floating just below the wing. He blinked. It moved, keeping pace with them. Then another appeared, and another. "Harper," he said quietly. "You see that?" Harper turned, following his gaze. "Flak?" "No. Too steady." The lights stayed there, 3 of them now, hovering like reflections in black water. They didn't rise or fall. They matched every turn, every roll. "Could be another bomber," Harper whispered. Reed shook his head. "Too close. They'd signal." The intercom crackled, then died. The lights pulsed once, then vanished. Silence. Only the engines, the wind, and the faint hiss of ice sliding across metal. "Maybe it was nothing," Harper said. Reed didn't answer. He wasn't sure what he'd seen, only that for the first time in years, he'd felt something colder than fear. They broke from the clouds an hour later. The storm stayed behind them, a black wall stretching from horizon to horizon. Ahead, the world was gray again, dawn just a thin silver line under the clouds. "We're clear," Harper said softly. "Almost home." Reed nodded. The relief in the cabin was almost physical. Sloane slumped in his chair, exhaustion written across his face. He turned the radio back on, searching for bass. Frequencies. For a long time there was only static. Then a faint tone. Morse code. Slow, uneven. He started to write it down, but the letters didn't make sense. They spelled his name. Then the captain's. Then a word that didn't belong to any code. "Stay." He tore the page out and crumpled it in his hand. "Contact home base?" Reed asked. "Not yet, sir." Sloane lied. His fingers were shaking again. The sky was quiet now, but it wasn't peace. It was that strange calm that feels like waiting. Harper was recalculating their heading when the plane lurched again, harder this time. The compass spun wildly. "Mag interference!" Dawson yelled. "All instruments down!" Reed cursed under his breath. "Visual bearings only." He looked out the window. The sea stretched below them, flat and silver under the faint light. Somewhere down there was England. Somewhere. "We'll ride the sun," he said. "East to west." Then he heard it again. Faint, through the hum of the engines. Not through the radio. Through the hull. A tapping. 3 knocks. A pause. 2. Harper looked up sharply. "Did you?" Reed nodded. The sound came again, this time from behind them. Mill's voice cut in. "Someone just walked over the fuselage." "Impossible," Dawson said. "We're sealed." "I heard it," Mills insisted. Reed's eyes stayed on the controls. Nobody moves. Nobody opens the hatch. The tapping stopped. Minutes passed. Then Sloane whispered, "Sir, the radio's transmitting on its own." Reed turned. The light on the panel was blinking. A steady rhythm. 3 pulses. Pause. 2. He reached over and shut the main switch off. The light kept blinking. Nobody spoke after that. The sky ahead was getting brighter, a narrow path of gold breaking through the gray. Home was somewhere in that direction. Reed's hands were trembling again, but his voice was calm. "Hold her steady," he said. "We're almost out of it." The clouds opened once more, and light filled the cabin, pale, unreal, washing the red away. The crew sat in silence, staring ahead. None of them saw the shadow following below, mirrored on the surface of the sea. It wasn't another plane.